Imagine if you have to log into your enterprise applications one after the other. Sounds exhausting, right? That is the reason probably you may lean towards custom identity providers like Okta, where you will allow your users to use one credentials and log into multiple different applications. But what if those applications need to talk to each other behind the scenes? Then probably you may set up something called external client credentials or even custom JOT to solve that requirements, which would actually solve the purpose, but in the long run, it may add significant toll to your system. In this use case, why don't we simply leverage the custom identity provider to handle the authentication? And then we can handle the authorization of Salesforce by handling it in our native Salesforce. So welcome to Salesforce with Vinayaka. Today we are talking about token exchange flow, and this is the sixth part of our external client app series that we are talking about. So what are we going to cover in this video? We are going to see a IDP called Auth0, which is equivalent to Okta, how we can set up and how exactly we can configure an application to get the access token, which will have the user context. We will also see how we can set up external client application in Salesforce, which is token enabled, and then further it can actually be tagged to a class called token exchange handler, which will allow us to get the access token along with the user context. So let's switch the gears towards the Auth0, which is IDP in our case, and we can get started. Before we talk more about Auth0, we need to understand there are three systems in this picture which we are talking today. One is the external system. In my case, I have considered it as Postman, which is trying to reach out to IDP. In this case, it is Auth0, which will be trying to get the access token before it hits to Salesforce, which is a third system, and try to insert or maybe even get the records from Salesforce. So the external flow, the external app, which is trying to hit the Salesforce, but before hitting the Salesforce, it will carry the user context of IDP and then transfer that to Salesforce. According to that user context, the records can be created or even the records can be fetched. Now, external application in our case Postman. Postman is trying to reach the IDP Auth0. It needs some application to hit to, right, to get the access token. And that is why I have created an application in this particular Auth0, which is called Okta Token Exchange Flow. All the setup, everything I have kept it by default, no change when I created this particular application. The thing that I have given is API access. So I have just enabled this particular one for my Okta JWT, which is custom JOT, which I will tell you in a momentary. So now if I go to the third party system, which is in our case Postman, and this is the Postman request that I'm trying to hit with auth token with the URL, and the grant type is client credential, and the client ID and the client secret is coming from this particular application which I have just created in my IDP. And you can see something called audience, and this is where our custom JOT comes into the picture, where it will carry the user context. So right now I'm using the audience as my domain name of Salesforce, for which I would like to hit once I get the access token from the IDP. All this particular Postman request, you can actually find it in my LinkedIn article as a reference, and use that particular reference to create your own Postman request. So now coming back to this particular application, I will switch to API, where I have created an audience so that whenever a postman is requesting to that particular IDP, it would return the access token, but it would actually return with the user context along with it. So let us wait to load up. So you can see I have created this particular token exchange Okta JWT, which is JOT, and this is a custom API. And you can see this is the audience. I have kept the same as my domain name that I just showed you. So whenever I'm passing this particular audience in my request of Postman, it would understand that the JOT has to be provided with this particular identity provider, so that you can also pass the user context. So let me switch to user. You can see I have created one user in here, and I have authenticated this particular email ID, and I have kept everything in this particular OAuth over here. So now let's switch to postman request and try to hit send. You can see access token has been generated, but as I was saying, it is also carrying the user context. But how would I know that this is carrying the user context? So I would just copy this particular access token and then go to something called jot web token, and then you can just replace this particular access token, which will decode it for you. What am I seeing in this? You can see there is an issuer who is the source of this particular request, and you can also see the subject. If you would have seen my previous jot video, I already spoke about subject, which is nothing but the user context that is actually carrying. If not, please go ahead and check out my previous external client app jot application setup as well. So now coming to this particular use case, I'm talking about the subject, and this is a subject where it will have the user context with me. What I've done in Salesforce is, if I go to my Salesforce and see the query for users, I've created this particular, I've entered this particular custom identity provider as a subject in this column called Federation Identity Identifier, and in this particular username I have kept it. That means I know this particular subject, which will come later in the stage to Salesforce, I've already mapped it to the user so that this particular user would be recognized as the user context, and according to that the access token would actually be provided to the external system. In our case it is Postman. So now I understood that this is the breakdown of my payload that is coming there, and I have already got the access token. As an external system, I tried to hit the IDP, I got the access token along with my user context now. What is needed is this particular access token would be going to Salesforce. It is trying to hit the Salesforce and get the access token from the Salesforce using this access token. So for the next step, before we actually dive into the Postman request, we will talk about our Salesforce setup. In this particular Salesforce setup, let's talk about external client app, which is token enabled. Everything is the default that we always spoke about, and you can get the client ID and client secret once you create that particular external client app. But before that, let's see what all the configurations that we have done. I've given the callback URL here. I have actually given the auth scope as per the need that I need. And in this flow enablement, you can see I have enabled this particular token exchange flow. And in security, I have given web server flow, and refresh token is also been enabled. Once I configure this particular one and hit save, then the one additional thing that I need to do is go to policies, and you select your profile and make sure that it is pre-authorized by admin so that this particular profile will get access to this external client app. And then you need to enable this particular checkbox called enable token exchange flow. Once you have checked this checkbox, this particular application will understand access token has to be provided based on a use case called token exchange flow. Right now, coming to this particular token exchange flow handler. So whenever a request is coming to this particular external client app application, since this particular token exchange flow is being checked, it would understand that it would get the access token from an handler called token exchange handler, and this is an abstract class which Salesforce actually provides. So I will be sharing this particular Salesforce documentation link in my LinkedIn article, which you can reference and create the same class in your org. You don't need to change anything on this abstract class because this is a standard Salesforce provided class. But what we need to do is we need to customize this particular abstract class as per our requirement so that we can get the access token as per the need. So now what we will understand in this particular class is there are two methods. One is validate incoming token and the other one is get user for token subject. If you see, both are virtual methods, which means it needs to be overridden for sure, but it need not, it need to be overridden, but not for sure, right? That means it is an optional for you to override. But in our use case, we have to override both of them, which I will be talking in a momentary. If you want to get this particular my token exchange class, I would be providing the same in my LinkedIn article as well, where you can go and reference that and create your own class according to your need. So now let's talk about our my token class, and then you can see there are different parameters that are there. The one that I'm interested is in the incoming token that has been passed. So this is the same token that we will be passing to the postman request in a moment, and see how exactly that particular access token, which we already saw that it contains different claims, and one of them is subject, which is user context, and that particular entire string will be coming in the parameter called incoming token. And as you can see, I'm giving this access token, like I have enabled for these kind of types, and in our case we are using the access token. And in this particular method, I'm passing the incoming token further, and you can see I'm just first printing this particular token, and then later I'm also printing the claim once it is deserialized. So this is the standard deserialization that I'm using, and once I get this deserialized claims, I'm going to pass the subject, which in my case user context. So once this particular method is done and it is returning the subject back, the control will move towards here, and then if there is no exception, the control will revert back to the abstract class. As we know, in this abstract class, once this method is done, the next method that is going to execute is this particular method. In this get user for token subject, if I see that, and you can see the result is being actually passed in this parameter. And in this particular result, when I get this parameter passed to this particular overridden method, then what I will do is I will get that particular user data. In my case, it's the subject, which is user context, and I will be querying the user with the same field that I just spoke about in Salesforce, where I have done the mapping to that particular user. So you can see I got this particular subject here, and then I would know, okay, this is a user that is there, and then I will pass the user ID to back, so that I would know which user actually tried to get the access token. So once I get that particular user, I'm going to return that user back. So this is the class, and we spoke about external client app. The one piece that we are missing is how would external client app would know that this is the class it has to pass the control over to get the access token. That is where our token exchange flow will come into picture. I mean, token exchange handler will come into picture. So this is a configuration that we will do, which will kind of act as a bridge between our external client app, which is token enabled, and it will also act as a bridge for our Apex class. That means external client application will pass the control to this token exchange handler, because we have checked this particular token exchange flow. Since it is checked, token exchange flow has been checked, and token exchange handler has been taken the control, it would know which class it has to pass over the control to, so that the access token will be generated accordingly. And what we need to do is we just have to map this particular external client app that we have been generated for, right? Okay, let's switch to now to postman request, where I will talk about how we can actually do a request. Again, this particular postman request, you can find it in my LinkedIn article as a reference to build your own postman request. I'm replacing the entire subject token that I have, which I have got from my IDP, and the URL remains the same, auth2/token. Grant type is token exchange, and the subject token is something that I just replaced with the access token that I got from the IDP. Subject token type would be access token, and the client ID and client secret would be the external client applications client ID client secret that we have generated in Salesforce, which is token enabled. So now once I hit this particular send, what it is doing behind the scenes is it is transferring the control to our external client application. Since it is token exchange, it was actually going to token exchange handler, where token exchange handler is going to pass the control to your abstract Apex class, and then get the user and create an access token and send it back. And we have got this particular access token here. So what I wanted to show also is, let's go to debug log. I want to quickly show how that particular claim is actually done. Okay, I think debug log is not enabled. Let me just quickly go and enable it. Okay, so let me try to hit send again. now I got the access token, but I just want to show behind the scenes for the debug log where I can clearly show you how the claim has been deserialized. So let me take the debug log here. You can see the same incoming token is being captured, whichever we are passing from the subject of our postman request, and then it has been deserialized, right? And then the claims I'm going to print here, and you can see I'm getting my domain URL, I'm getting the other identifiers like when exactly this particular token will get expired and who is the source of it, and this is the subject that I just spoke about, and this is the same subject. If I copy this and try to Control F and Control V, then I'm getting this federal identifier. So I know that this is a user that is actually trying to request. But if I go to my deserialized one web token, then the same is actually matching. So now I would know, okay, this is a user that is actually trying to get the access token. The user context is actually carry forwarded. Now use this particular access token. So either I can get that particular data from Salesforce based on the user context, because we would have that, and like OWD, everything is been actually handled. So we would actually get the records based on that particular profile or the permission set that we have assigned. So I can just simply go here and get this particular one. Since I'm using limits, like it would not have any profile or anything like that. But if you are trying to fetch the actual records, then probably it would respect all our OWD or the data security that we have provided in the Salesforce. But now let's try to create a record, which I'm trying to create an account record, and then I'm going to replace my access token here. And then you can see in the body, I'm trying to send an account, which the name of the account is token exchange account. So what we can see now here is we can see how our user context has been carry forwarded so that the same records would be created. So let me keep this. Okay, you can see account got created, right? And this particular account owner is farm org farm, which is the same user context that we have actually forwarded, right? So you can see this is the epic org farm. If I open this user, this is the same user that we use for getting the access token, and the same user context has been carried forwarded to create an account. This is how we can use our IDP to handle our token exchange flow and then create the same users, have the same user context to create the records. And if a new application is coming, all they need to do is just do the mapping that we have in our system and use that particular mapping and send the jot accordingly from their end, so that we don't have to worry about their authentication. We just have to worry about their authorizations from Salesforce end. I hope you like this video, and thank you for staying in and spending your time. What we are going to cover in our next video is we are going to talk about, since we have spoken about all this kind of flow enablements already, there are 6 flow enablements that we have already spoken, 5 flow enablement if we are already spoken about, then we are going to try to compare and see which use case fits better for which kind of flow enablement, so that we kind of conclude our external client app series in the next video. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.